Hello guys, welcome to a new live stream. I hope you can hear and see me. I am switching over to my other screen. First I have to check. Yes, okay, I'm live. Hello guys, I'm starting the presentation right now. Welcome to a new live stream. For the guys who don't know me, I do sometimes live streams, I do videos and tutorials about Rekordbox. I did a lot of them, but my goal is to make more videos about DJing and producing. But right now, at the moment, I'm a little bit concentrating on Rekordbox and computers for music production, because those videos help to grow the channel. So welcome. I'd like to grab these moments of these live streams to sit down and talk with you, so we have direct interaction, which I don't have with regular videos. So that's something I really like to do, and I do that in a form of a topic. And in this this live stream, the topic is budget computers for music production. I want to say something about Patreon, because I want to go full-time with this. I have a job, but I want to move over to becoming a full-time DJ and producer. So I try to go full-time, and I hope that you want to support me in that, and therefore I have a Patreon page. I want to keep the YouTube content free, so it is available for everyone, but I need also support to make these kinds of videos, because if I make these videos I can't work. The step in is as low as $1 a month, so $12 a year. I have a special tier, a premium tier, that I will provide you guys with extras, like the presentation, the keynote presentation. I will publish on my Patreon for my premium Patreon members. You can find me on patreon.com/DexterClark. Then the topic at hand, the budget laptops. What I want to do again in this live stream, I want to pitch the topic I have. I want to make a video out of that with the things. Hopefully I get some feedback from you guys, or maybe some questions that I can answer in this video. At the end of the presentation you have the possibility to ask me questions, and hopefully I can incorporate your input in the video. If not, I make the video and you can leave the comments in the video. Also, if you don't watch this live, no problem at all. Leave anything you have to say, or suggestions you might have. Can you spend some time on this or that? Please leave it in the comments below. I'm really curious. I can incorporate that in a video that I want to make this week, and it will be published not this Saturday, but the Saturday after that. This Saturday I want to make a revisit of the video that I did about laptops for music production. Those are the optimum configuration laptops. That's not what I'm focusing in on the video of next week. Next week is budget. This week the regular video is targeted to the regular laptops for music production. So the optimum configuration. There was something that someone commented in the comment section of the video that I did in July, that I needed to make an update on that video to incorporate that what he said. So the topic at hand, budget laptops for music production. I searched for laptops around the €500 mark, and I want to tell you something about what you have to look out for when it comes to budget laptops. You have to look into specifics, and later I want to give you 5 types that I think that are really suitable for music production. Really, we'll come back to that in a minute. What makes me the expert? I switched to this sheet very quickly. I have a degree in software engineering, so I have a little bit of understanding how computers work. I worked 10 years in a computer store, and a friend of mine who owns a computer store advised me on the latest ins and outs when it comes to brands, for example. And of course, I also produce music, so that makes the ideal combination to understand how a DAW works and why some things take up a lot of memory, for example. I already mentioned it a little bit earlier. I want to zoom in on budget laptops in this video, and that is somewhat different. It is different than the good laptops, the optimum configuration laptops for music production. Wow, why? Oh, my text has gone to the left. You have to bear in mind, budget laptops are built not to last, but to be cheap. So there are cheap components in there, and you have to take into account that those laptops will be broken after the term of warranty. They're just not built to cope with heavy workload. I compiled a whitelist and a blacklist for computers for music production, the budget computers. First of all, the blacklist, and there are a little bit the same brands, but I expanded that, the same brands, what I talked about earlier. The blacklist, so the computers you don't, please don't buy the computers of these brands. MSI, Acer, Lenovo, Samsung, Medion, and some Dell series, and that Dell series has not to do with build quality, which the brands on the top of our list have, but they have some latency problems, so that's why Dell, these series Dell are not suited for music production. Also, the Chromebook is not suited for music production. Then I've also compiled a whitelist. The brands over here are, so if you buy a budget laptop, please buy them of one of these brands. HP, Asus, MacBook, yeah, that's Apple MacBook. Not cheap, but okay, they are pretty good when it comes to the other brands on the previous sheet. Then the Microsoft Surface Books, that are laptops from Microsoft that are pretty good, and Toshiba. You can go for second-hand or refurbished laptops. You can do that. You have to bear a couple of things in mind. Those laptops are good for the budget, but you have to bear in mind that in the top of your head, you have to know you buy also someone else's misery if there's something wrong with the laptop. Maybe someone wants to get rid of it, or they give it back to the store and they sell it as a refurbished, or they sell it directly to you, and then it's called second hand. Keep that in mind. Second hand. But you have to keep in mind with second-hand laptops that you need to have all the drivers. Nowadays, it's really common to look up the drivers on the internet. But sometimes there are components in a laptop that you can't find on the internet, or they're going under a different brand name. And if you type in that in Google, nothing or really or other products will show up. So make sure that you get all the drivers of second-hand notebooks, not everything you can find on the internet. Also, reinstall Windows before using. The reason for that is that you also want to get rid of all the viruses and rid of all the bloatware. Pre-installed, there comes a lot of bloatware, but probably the user who owned the laptop installed also programs that are running on the background of your laptop, and you need every CPU cycle for music production. CPU is king when it comes to music production. You can't waste any cycles on that, and especially second-hand. That means that they are somewhat older, or refurbished. That means that they are somewhat older. You need every CPU cycle. So please reinstall Windows for that, or Mac for that matter. When it comes to refurbished, yeah, keep in mind that it's not a way of saying that it's just secondhand. It was broken before. You know for sure if you buy secondhand, it can not be broken, but if you're buying refurbished, you know for sure that it was broken, but they fixed it. And you have to take the chance that they fixed it in the right way, or they did fix the right problem and not a problem that is related to that. Yeah, make sure that you have extended warranty, not a month, but try to get a year. I know that's really difficult with refurbished, but there's a reason why they are so scarce with that warranty, because they know if something was broken before, it will probably break again. My recommendations. I showed this sheet earlier in another live stream about laptops for music production. There are about 4 categories when it comes to computers for music production. There's the budget category, and that is the category that we're talking about in this live stream. The mid-range category, that are about the i5 processors. Then the high range, that is the range that I talked about before. That is the i7 processor range with about 16 gigabytes of memory. And then the stupidly expensive range, and that's the Core i9 of Intel processors. But we're talking about the budgets. The processor, yeah. Try to get an Intel Core i3 or i5 processor of the 8th generation. I tried to look up some models, and i5 processors is really difficult to get that for about 500 euros. So I think you want to fall back to the i3, but go for the Core i5 or the Core i3. You can also go, sometimes there's a Pentium or a Celeron inside. Don't go for that. That may be good for the battery life of your computer, but is not good for your music production. Yeah, you will run into problems, definitely, sooner or later. The memory, I made a special video about memory for computers for music production, where I tested how many memory do you actually need. And no, I'm gonna not give away the clue of that video. Go watch it. Get at least 8 gigabytes. 4 gigabytes is too small. You will find probably every laptop in the budget category is too small, has 4 gigabytes and is too small. What you have to look out for is what is the maximum you can expand on that memory. There are notebooks that can only expand to 8 gigabytes, and I can tell you up front that is too low. Make sure that you can expand to at least 16 gigabytes. If you don't have the budget right now to buy it, 16 gigabytes, you can go for 8 or 4. I don't recommend that. So what's the max expandable? The hard disk, yes. That's problematic when you're buying a budget computer, because the memory is crazy stupidly expensive right now. That means that the SSD, which is effectively just memory, are also stupidly expensive. You have to bear in mind 256 gigabytes is too small. You will run out of space, probably after installing your DAW and your sample packs. You can do some simple things and try to maybe put your samples and your project on an external hard disk. You can do that. It's a lot of hassle, but okay. Just to start out, it's maybe fine. then you can choose 256 gigabytes. Make sure that you can replace it later. So you can replace it for a 512 gigabytes SSD, at least. It's also possible that you have a spinning platter drive in your laptop. They do that to cut the costs, because SSDs are so expensive. The problem with that is that those drives are mostly 5400 RPM. Those drives are too slow. Make sure that you have a spinning platter of 7200 RPM. There are not a lot of 7200 RPM disks there. And if you have a spinning platter drive, make sure that you can replace it later with an SSD. SSD will make your computer so much responsive, more responsive than a spinning platter drive. SSD is yeah, it's just to speed up your computer, but it won't really speed up your DAW. The main reason for that is that for speed, the most important factor is the CPU, but loading your project will go faster. Starting up your DAW will go from 1 minute to 5 seconds, for example. Closing projects, switching through presets, that will go quicker. But the synthesizers will not produce any other sound if you have not an SSD. A monitor. A lot of laptops have 13-inch monitors. That is too small, guys. I have a 13-inch monitor and on my laptop, and it's unworkable. You can't work with that. 14-inch, same thing. You have to at least have 15-inch. If you choose a smaller monitor, for example, the 13-inch monitor, you can make some cut in costs. Make sure that you have an external connector for an external monitor, for example via HDMI or VGA or DisplayPort when you have an Apple. So you can connect a big screen to your laptop so you can work with that. Thunderbolt connection for an external sound card. Now, well, that is also problematic on budget laptops. The reason for that being that Thunderbolt is a technique that is used by Apple, and Apple charges manufacturers for using that Thunderbolt connection. So in budget laptops there is just no budget to purchase a Thunderbolt license. So a lot of laptops don't have Thunderbolt connections. In that case, go for the USB alternatives for sound cards. I recently tested on my channel a Focusrite 2i2. That was a really good sound card for the money you get. It's a USB sound card. Opt for that. I made a special cheat sheet, and that I have over here. It's a cheat sheet where I laid out the 5 models that I will recommend in this video, but also there is the whitelist, the blacklist, and the ideal specs for computers for music production. You can find that on my Patreon page for the premium Patreon members. Then the models, and I have a couple of examples of laptops that I think are really suited, judging on the specs they provide on the internet. Yeah, little disclaimer. The following info can be wrong or outdated. I looked up some specs, but it doesn't really mean that those specs are correct. I can also make mistakes in the things that I type over in the presentation that I do. Always consult the website of the manufacturers. The following notebooks are not designed for heavy workload. Budget laptops are not designed for heavy workload. I already said that, and especially not music production. They to be honest, it's really sad, but they lack the proper power to do proper music production. The view you have to have of budget computers for music production is those are computers, and with computers you can produce music, so by chance you can also produce music with budget computers. The first model on my list is an HP. There are a lot of type numbers with other type numbers with other types with the same model number, type number, but they are different laptops. The HP 250 G6. I saw one with the following specs: an i3 with 2 cores, 2 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of memory. You have to expand that immediately to 8 gigabytes, 256 gigabytes. I pointed that out with a star because 256 gigabytes is too low. A 15-inch monitor, and it has an HDMI connector for an external monitor. The second model on my list is also an HP, the 250 G6 again, but with other specs. And here we have an i5 processor. We climb up in price. The previous one was 450 euros. Prices, by the way, are in euros. And this one is 560. So you pay 100 euros more for an i5 processor. You will definitely need that. You also see that the number of gigahertz is higher. The cores are the same. 4 gigabytes expanded immediately to 8. You will run into problems directly. A somewhat smaller hard disk, and that had a little bit of strange number, 240 gigabytes. Oh, there's a here's a mistake in it. It's 240 gigabytes. I don't know why that weird number is there. Sometimes they put Windows on a partition on your hard drive, and that means that you have less hard drive for your to save stuff. Maybe they did that here. Model number 3, Asus with a K406UA BM141T. It has a i3 processor of the 7th generation, so it is the older generation. It has a really high number of gigahertz, so the speed is pretty high. But the 8th generation that we are living currently with has it is just quicker. They optimized the processor a bit. So i3 7th gen and i3 8th gen. i3 8th gen with the same number of gigahertz is faster than i3 of the 8th gen with the same specs is faster than the 7th gen. 4 gigabytes again expanded immediately to 8. 128 gigabytes of hard disk space. That's too low. That's really too low. And a 14-inch monitor. That's also too small. Then the HP, the Notebook 14, they called it just the Notebook 14, the CF0200ND. The i3 with 2 cores, 2.2 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of memory expanded immediately, 128 gigabytes of SSD, logic, and a 14-inch monitor, 550 euros. And the last model in my list is again an Asus, the VivoBook R540UADM123T. It's an i3 processor with 2 cores and 2 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of memory, expand that, and to 128 gigabytes of memory, and it has a 15-inch monitor, about 450 euros. That are only 5 models, but of course there are more alternatives out there. The cheat sheet that I mentioned earlier, over here, those models are here with the specs, so you can really easily compare them to each other. This presentation I will also upload on Patreon, so my premium Patreon members can download it. than where we all came for. Hopefully, I'm really curious if you have any questions, and I'm switching back to YouTube so I can see the chat. Okay. First question, hey mate, what do you think of the new 32 gigabyte RAM i9 MacBook Pros for music production? Oh, Apple. Wait a bit. The problem with they had some thermal throttling issues. So the i9 is a really powerful processor. What they had problems with is that the i9 is a processor that can cope with more CPU cycles, is faster. Problem is that it gets so hot that Apple reduces the number of cycles that the processor does. The problem with that is that the i7 was quicker than the i9. They fixed that this week, luckily, but there is a second problem with those notebooks, and they introduced the T2 chip in those notebooks. So encryption, for example, of your SSD will go through that chip, so your processor doesn't have to do that. That's on zich a really smart move. Problem with that is that it has kernel panics right now. So once or twice a day your computer will display a black message that is basically equivalent to the blue screen of Windows. In Windows we got rid of it, but in on the Mac we didn't. Wait a bit, I think that they will fix that. It's really sloppy. Sorry Apple, it's really sloppy for a company that charges 5, 6, I don't know what that laptop costs, a ridiculously amount of money. You've been pretty sloppy. Same with the keyboard on that model. By chance I talked to a friend of mine who's a really big Apple fan too, and he also said I wouldn't take a Apple notebook right now. That keyboard also it's not the most stable. So I've everything Apple, but yeah, I've a really hate relationship with that with those notebooks. I think I will just get a Windows desktop. Yes, definitely. I didn't talked about that in the video. You have more value for your money with a desktop computer. If portability is an option and not a necessity, choose definitely a desktop. You can get so much more worth for your money with a PC. So not choosing for Apple, but also a desktop model PC. You're in the budget range when it comes to laptops, but you can get a pretty decent desktop computer for the same price. Especially when you build it your own, and you can it has another advantage. You can add components later on. If you say, well, I'm just putting a small SSD in for example 128 gigabytes, so I have my DAW will boot up fast, my operating system will boot up fast, then and you have a second hard disk, a 7200 RPM hard disk for your project, for example, you can do that with a PC, and that's really difficult with a laptop. So and then later on you can even replace it if you want to, if you have the budget. Same thing with memory. You don't have to invest immediately in that 16 gigabytes of memory. It's really expensive right now. Go for the 8 gigabytes and expand later with another 8 gigabytes. Then you have 16. A desktop PC is really good suited for building it up and speccing it out step by step. Any questions? No. Any other questions, maybe regarding computers for music production or optimum configurations, or I'd like to keep a bit to the topic at hand. Okay. No one, then I will conclude this this video. You can please, if you like, support me on Patreon so I can make more awesome content for YouTube. And oh yeah, a question. I love creating an old school type of drum and bass. The style is also that all the producers and DJs used to create a kind of Amiga. So what's the best software DAW that I can use to produce? I am currently in the thinking process of doing a separate video on DAWs. I can really quickly answer that. Yeah, the best software is the software you prefer to use. If you're starting out, then I'll say base the operating system, for example, on the DAW that you choose. I think, for example, if you starting out with Studio One, that is the software that I use, those guys have a free version that is pretty complete. There are some little omissions like MP3s, for example, because they have to pay license fees for that, so that isn't included. Just start out. It doesn't matter. You can always switch later. And I know a lot of producers will work with Ableton, and to be honest, yeah, some sound engines are better. They say that this Logic sound engine, for example, is better than Ableton's. I didn't hear that, but they say that. But I can't really prove that. And to be honest, if you know the workflow in one DAW, you probably know the workflow in another DAW. You have to look for functions, for example, true, and sometimes they name components differently. For example, a Logic talks about a project and they mean a song with that, and in Studio One they talk about a project and they mean a song. No, they mean a with a project they mean a how do you call that, mastering project, and they have a separate thing for song. So but I started out in Logic and then switched to Studio One, and but I see Studio One has a lot of flaws. Um, Logic has a lot of flaws. I also worked a little bit with Ableton Live, has also a lot of flaws. So I can't really answer that question really well. Um, so what's the best a DAW you mean? What's the best DAW? But are you just starting out, or do you have experience with a DAW? Because I think that every DAW is equipped to do that with. I also heard a lot of good sounds about Reaper, for example. But yeah, try the free version of Studio One, Presonus.com. Presonus.com. Just try the free version and see if you like it. And if you don't, try another software. I believe there's a free version of Ableton. Yeah, that's a trial version. And Logic doesn't have a trial version. Okay, guys, thank you for watching. If there are no additional questions. I also want to do 4K video editing and color grading, so a laptop can handle this task as well. Well, 4K video editing is really heavy on the processor. If you want to do editing, by chance I saw a couple of videos comparing Final Cut to Premiere, which has a version for Windows and for Mac, and Mac outperforms with Final Cut, even with all the computers, outperforms a Premiere. So if you want to do really a lot of editing, try an Apple computer. Things like color grading is also very intensive on the CPU. I wouldn't go for a laptop then, because 4K is so intensive. You have to go with that warmth somewhere. I would go with a desktop if you can. Yeah, that's funny. I produce music, but I have to also edit the videos for YouTube, so I know a little bit about that too. But to go back to your question about that DAW, I know that there are producers out there that say that's the best DAW for that kind of genre, but I really can't see why that is. Because DAWs have nowadays all pretty much all the same functionality. So there are some shortcuts, for example, in Studio One that make it somewhat easier to edit, but effectively, the things that I don't like about Studio One or Logic, there's a workaround for that in another DAW, and when you have one feature that you really like, you have to give up on another feature. For example, my Studio One experience, the sidechaining in Logic is really easy to set up. You have a compressor, for example, you select the sidechain, so the other channel that you want to use as an input, and that's a side chaining. In Studio One, for example, I hate that about Studio One. It works so horribly complicated. You have to send it out first to a send channel, then you have to select the sidechain in the plugin itself. You can't select it, but you have to enable that. Then you have to send it to the right. Yeah, it's horrible. It's you have to look, oh, that list, oh man. But it still works. It still works, and you can still sidechain with it. It's maybe not the way I'd like to, the Logic way, but you can still do it. Well, yeah, the reason why I make the videos about computers for music production is because I had myself an interest in, hey, maybe I want to switch to Windows, because you can, for 5,000 euros you can build a Mac, and for 1,500 euros you can you can build a PC, and you have the same thing. I think, but I can't prove that. I think that the Windows and the Macs are evenly quick or slow, the reason how you want to look at it. I like the Mac operating system, and that's why I have such problems switching to Windows. There are a lot of things that I like about the Mac operating system. Printing, for example, or if you want to reinstall your computer, you only have to copy the program files, the programs from your backup hard disk to your current hard drive, and your programs are installed, for example. And in Windows you can't do that. You're always sticking with that stinky registry, and you have to run all the installation things, all the installation programs of the programs you want to reinstall. So it has a lot of advantages. So I have a little bit trouble myself. I'm not content with my iMac, but that's just because it's too old and too slow. But I still edit my videos on that, and I still produce music on that. 18 core, you will definitely have advantage of that, but it's so expensive. Yeah, yeah. And I think you can better choose a desktop Mac right now than a notebook, the MacBook, definitely. If you don't like the keyboard, you can throw it away and connect a Logitech keyboard to that. Does anyone have a question? Okay, then I conclude this video. And guys, thank you for watching. If you have any questions after I disconnect the chat, then leave it in the comments of one of my videos or on the comments of this live stream. It will be put on YouTube if YouTube has processed the video, so you can leave it in the comments there. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my videos or in my next live stream. You can also, by the way, if you have suggestions for future topics for live streams that we can discuss in the chat and do the live stream about, please let me know. For example, that DAW discussion is a really interesting one, I think. I didn't do a video about that, but that will come somewhere, hopefully in the next weeks. Thank you for watching, and